Jace had never imagined his mission would end like this. One moment he was on a routine patrol, soaring through the vastness of space, and the next, his ship was crashing onto an unknown planet after an unexpected attack. The emergency alarms blared in his ears and the control panel flickered in front of him, throwing sparks. He barely managed to bring the ship to the ground without losing his life, but now he was stranded, alone. As the dust settled and the emergency lights in the ship flickered off, Jace slowly unstrapped himself from the seat. His heart raced, not just from the crash, but from the uncertainty of what lay ahead. He had no idea where he was, no way of contacting command, and worst of all, he had no idea how to survive on this strange world. The ship was heavily damaged, and the only option was to leave. Jace grabbed his survival pack, stuffed with emergency rations, a first aid kit, and a communication device that was, unfortunately, out of signal range. Stepping outside into the alien world felt like stepping into another universe entirely. The sky was a deep shade of purple, and the ground beneath his boots was soft like moss. Giant trees towered above him, their trunks wrapped in a silver-like substance that shimmered in the light of the twin suns overhead. Jace couldn't help but wonder if he would ever make it out of here alive. He scanned the horizon for any signs of life. The world around him was eerily silent, and he felt a chill crawl up his spine. Yet something else gnawed at him, a sense that he wasn't truly alone. Hours passed. He moved cautiously, not wanting to make any unnecessary noise. The forest was dense and the air was thick with the scent of unfamiliar flowers. It wasn't until he reached a small clearing that he saw her. She stood there, just beyond a cluster of glowing plants, her eyes locked onto his. The alien woman was unlike anything Jace had ever seen before. She was tall and slender, with smooth, almost translucent skin that seemed to reflect the light around her. Her hair shimmered like silver threads, cascading down her back in waves. What struck Jace most was her eyes. They were bright and filled with an intensity that made him pause, unsure of what to do next. The woman took a step forward, and Jace instinctively reached for his weapon. But she didn't seem threatening. She was looking at him as if she were studying him, her expression both curious and desperate. "Please, help me," she said, her voice soft, like a melody, though the words were strained. "I need your help." Jace hesitated. He had no idea who or what she was, but something in her voice made him lower his weapon. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice steady but cautious. "I am Elysia," she replied, her eyes never leaving his face. "My people. We are cursed. I cannot feel what I need to feel. Please, help me." The way she spoke, the way her voice trembled, hit Jace harder than he expected. There was a kind of pain in her words, a deep longing for something he couldn't understand. She wasn't like the hostile creatures he had faced in battle. She was different, vulnerable in a way that made him feel uneasy. "I'm sorry, but I don't know how I can help you," Jace said, his voice firm. "I'm stranded here too. My ship crashed. I need to figure out a way off this planet." Elysia stepped closer, her presence almost overwhelming. She looked like she hadn't spoken to anyone in years. "You don't understand," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm alone. My people are cursed. We cannot love, we cannot feel. My world is dying, and I cannot fix it without help." Jace watched her, trying to make sense of her words. It didn't make sense. A curse? He had no experience with such things. He was just a soldier, trained to fight and survive. But her eyes, they told a story of despair he couldn't ignore. "Why me?" Jace asked, still unsure if he should trust her. "Why would you come to me for help?" "I felt you," Elysia said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I knew you would come. There is something about you, something human. You are different." Jace frowned. The idea of this alien knowing about humans in such a personal way made him uneasy, but he could see the sincerity in her eyes. She wasn't dangerous, not like the others he'd faced. For the first time since his crash, Jace felt something stir within him. It wasn't fear, but a strange sense of compassion. He didn't know why, but he knew he couldn't leave her like this. "I'll help you," Jace said, surprising himself. "But we need to figure out how to survive first. After that, we'll see." Alicia's eyes brightened, though the sadness never fully left them. She stepped closer, reaching out a hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't know how much this means to me." Jace nodded, unsure of where this would lead, but certain that his life was about to change in ways he could never have imagined. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty. Jace and Alicia ventured deeper into the alien forest, searching for shelter, food, and some kind of communication with the outside world. Alicia, though an alien, had a strange calmness about her, moving with the grace of someone who was used to navigating the natural world. Jace, on the other hand, felt every step as he struggled to keep up. His thoughts were still consumed by the shipwreck, and the reality of being stranded on a distant planet weighed heavily on him. Alicia had shown him the basics of surviving on this alien world: how to find water, where the edible plants were, and what to avoid. But what truly puzzled Jace was her strange, persistent sadness. Even in moments when she smiled or laughed softly, there was always a shadow in her eyes, a deep longing for something that she couldn't have. He noticed it the most during their quiet moments, sitting around their small campfire at night. Alicia would look at the stars as if searching for something, her eyes distant as though she were hoping to find an answer that was forever out of reach. One evening, after they had gathered a small meal of fruits and plants that Alicia had identified, Jace sat next to her. The fire crackled between them, casting soft light on her delicate features. She had been unusually silent, staring into the fire as if lost in thought. "Alicia," Jace said, breaking the silence, "I don't get it. You keep saying that your people are cursed, but I've never heard of anything like that before." Alicia turned her gaze to him, her eyes sad but soft. "It's not something I can explain easily. My people once lived with great power and beauty. But a long time ago, we were cursed by a rival species. They wanted to break us, to take away everything that made us whole. And so they created a curse that made us incapable of love, of connection. Without love, we wither inside." Jace listened closely, trying to understand. "But why do you need me? I'm just a soldier, not some kind of healer." Alicia's expression softened even more. "You're human. That is what matters. The curse can only be broken by someone from outside our world, someone who can feel love deeply. We've tried everything. Nothing works. But when I met you, I felt something different. Your heart, your emotions, they're so pure. I can feel them, Jace. I believe that your love, your touch, is what will free me. And my people." Jace's heart pounded as he took in her words. He had never thought of himself as someone capable of breaking a curse. He was just a soldier, trained to fight, to protect, not to be the answer to some ancient mystery. Yet there was something about Alicia that made him want to help her, to ease the sorrow that seemed to follow her every step. Her vulnerability, the way she looked at him with such hope, struck him deeper than anything he had ever experienced. "I don't know if I can fix all of that," Jace said softly, "but I'll help you however I can." A smile, small but genuine, appeared on Alicia's lips. It was the first time he'd seen her truly smile since they'd met. There was a quiet strength in her, something he hadn't noticed before, hidden beneath the layers of sadness and longing. As the days passed, their bond grew stronger. They worked together to build a small shelter, crafted from the alien wood and vines. Jace found that, despite his initial reluctance, he started to care for her in a way he couldn't explain. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about her, the way she laughed at the most trivial things, how she would share stories of her world, and how, despite everything, she still held on to hope. One morning, as they ventured out to gather more supplies, Alicia paused, her eyes wide. With a sudden realization, she was standing in front of a small shimmering pool of water. Jace noticed that the pool wasn't just beautiful, it seemed to glow faintly, as if it held some kind of power. "What is this place?" Jace asked, stepping closer. Elysia knelt, down beside the pool, her fingers brushing the surface. This is where I first felt the curse. It's the source of it, the place where my people were changed. It said that anyone who drinks from the water will lose the ability to love, to feel. I come here sometimes hoping that the curse will lift, but it never does. Jay stood beside her, looking into the pool. He had heard enough stories about cursed places, but this felt different. There was something in the air, an energy, that made him feel both fearful and awestruck. Without thinking, Jace reached out and touched the water. The cool sensation spread through his fingers, and for a moment, everything around him seemed to pause. He looked at Elysia, who was watching him, with wide eyes. Maybe you don't have to drink it to feel its power, she whispered. Maybe it's in the heart. Jace nodded slowly, understanding that there was something more between them than just words. This wasn't just a mission. It wasn't about survival anymore. It was about Elysia, about their growing connection, and about the possibility that maybe, just maybe, he could be the one to break the curse that had bound her for so long. Jace and Elysia continued their journey through the alien world, the landscape becoming even stranger as they traveled further from their makeshift shelter. The skies above them seemed to shimmer in various shades of purple and green, while the ground beneath their feet changed from soft moss to hard crystalline formations. It was as if the very planet itself was alive, shifting and changing with each passing moment. Despite the beauty of the world around them, Jace couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in his chest. He had been trained for combat, for survival, but this was different. He was no longer just trying to stay alive. He was trying to help someone. Elysia wasn't just a fellow survivor. She was someone whose fate seemed to be entwined with his own in ways he didn't understand. Elysia had been quiet for the past few hours, lost in thought as they trekked through the dense forest. Jace had gotten used to her silences, but today it felt heavier, as if something was weighing her down. He noticed that her movements were slower than usual, her steps more deliberate, as though she was afraid of something she couldn't quite put into words. "Elysia," Jace said, his voice gentle. "What's on your mind?" She stopped walking and looked at him, her eyes distant but soft. "I was just thinking," she said quietly, "about what you said before. About helping me." Jace raised an eyebrow. "What about it?" "You said you'd help me," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "But what if there's no way to fix this? What if the curse is too strong, too old for anyone to break?" Jace's heart clenched at her words. He had heard the uncertainty in her voice, the fear that she didn't want to admit. He could see it in the way she avoided his gaze, as though she was afraid that if she looked at him, he might see how broken she truly felt. "We'll figure it out," Jace said, his voice firm but soothing. "I don't know how, but I'm not going to leave you. Not now. Not ever." Elysia looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and sadness. "I don't know if I can believe that," she whispered. "I've been alone for so long, my people, they've been cursed for generations. I don't even know if we can ever be whole again." Jace stepped closer to her, his hand gently resting on her shoulder. "We'll find a way. I'll help. You, Elysia. I promise." For a moment they stood there in silence, the weight of their words hanging in the air. The alien world around them seemed to hold its breath, as if the planet itself were listening to their conversation. Finally, Elysia nodded, her shoulders relaxing slightly. "I want to believe you," she said softly. "I really do." They continued walking, the quiet stretch of forest unfolding before them. The path grew more difficult as they approached a mountain range in the distance. Jace could feel the air growing colder, the atmosphere changing. The once vibrant colors of the sky were now muted, as though the planet itself was reacting to their presence. The tension between them was thick, and Jace couldn't help but wonder if they were walking into something far more dangerous than they anticipated. It wasn't long before they came across a clearing where a large structure stood, an ancient temple, its walls covered in strange markings and symbols. The building seemed to pulse with energy, an unsettling hum filling the air as they approached. Elysia stopped just before the entrance, her eyes wide with recognition. "This is it," she said, her voice trembling. "This is where the curse began?" Jace looked at her, his eyes narrowing. "What do you mean? You think this place is the source of the curse?" Elysia nodded. "I believe it is. This temple was built long ago by my ancestors. It was meant to protect us, to help us grow stronger. But when our enemies came, they twisted the magic of this place, using it to curse my people. This is where it all started." Jace felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The air around them seemed to grow heavier, as if the temple was alive and aware of their presence. The strange hum grew louder, vibrating in his chest. "Should we go inside?" Jace asked, his voice uncertain. He had faced many dangers before, but something about this place felt different. This wasn't just a fight for survival. This was something deeper, something ancient and powerful. Elysia hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "We have no choice. If we're going to break the curse, we need to find the source of it. This is the only place where we might be able to find answers." Jace stepped forward, taking a deep breath as he pushed open the heavy stone doors of the temple. The air inside was cool and musty, the scent of ancient stone and dust filling his nostrils. He could barely see anything in the darkness, but Elysia's presence beside him was comforting, her hand gently brushing against his. As they stepped deeper into the temple, the hum from before grew louder, echoing off the stone walls. The markings on the walls began to glow faintly, casting an eerie light on the path ahead. Jace could feel the weight of history pressing down on them, the significance of this place too great to ignore. With each step, he felt a growing sense of urgency. They were getting closer to something powerful. But was it the answer they were looking for, or would it be the final challenge they would have to face? The deeper Jace and Elysia ventured into the temple, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The walls seemed to close in around them, the eerie glow from the symbols on the walls casting strange shadows that danced like ghosts. Each step they took echoed in the silence as though the temple itself was alive, watching them, waiting. Elysia led the way, her movement steady but tense, as if she knew exactly where they were going. Jace followed closely behind, his hand resting on the hilt of his weapon, ready for anything. He had no idea what they might find here, if anything at all. The air was thick with mystery, and his instincts told him that this place held more danger than he could comprehend. After what felt like hours of walking through narrow corridors and grand chambers filled with strange carvings, they reached a large circular room at the heart of the temple. In the center of the room stood an altar made of dark stone, its surface etched with more symbols. The room was empty, save for a large glowing crystal suspended above the altar, pulsing with a strange rhythmic light. Elysia paused at the entrance, her eyes fixed on the crystal. "This is it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "This is where the curse began." Jace looked around, trying to make sense of the scene before him. The crystal seemed to be the source of the temple's strange energy, its glow casting an almost hypnotic light across the room. The air around it buzzed with a faint hum like the sound of a distant storm on the horizon. He stepped closer to Elysia, who had become motionless, her gaze locked on the crystal. "What are we supposed to do?" he asked, unsure of how to proceed. "How do we stop the curse?" Elysia's voice was barely more than a whisper as she spoke. "The crystal, it holds the magic that was used to curse my people. My ancestors built this temple to protect us, but it was twisted. The energy here, it was meant to be a gift, a way for my people to connect to the stars. But now, it's the reason we can't feel love. It's the reason we're trapped in this endless cycle of emptiness." Jace looked at the crystal, a deep sense of unease settling in his stomach. The idea of breaking something so ancient and powerful felt like an impossible task. And what exactly do we do with it? How do we destroy it or fix it? Elysia closed her eyes for a moment, her brow furrowing in concentration. "I don't know," she admitted. "But there is a legend. An old story that my people used to tell. It said that only a heart full of love can break the curse. Only someone who can truly love can touch the crystal without being consumed by its power. Jace frowned, trying to understand. You mean, me? Alicia nodded slowly, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and fear. Yes, you, Jace. You've shown me something that I thought was lost forever. You've shown me love, and it's because of you that I can even feel again. Jace's heart raced at her words. He had never thought of himself as someone who could wield that kind of power, especially not in a place like this. He was just a soldier, a human who had been thrown into this situation by accident. But looking at Alicia, her eyes filled with such trust, he realized that he couldn't back away now. He had to do this, not just for her, but for her people as well. Taking a deep breath, Jace stepped forward, his hand reaching out toward the glowing crystal. The moment his fingers brushed the surface, the air around him seemed to charge with energy. The hum grew louder and the crystal pulsed in response as though it were alive, reacting to his touch. A surge of warmth flooded through him, and for a brief moment he felt a connection, something deep and ancient, as if the temple itself were reaching out to him. But then, something shifted. The warmth turned into an intense pressure, as though the very essence of the crystal was trying to force him back. His heart began to race, his breath quickening as he felt a pull, a strange force trying to separate him from Alicia. "Jace," Alicia cried, her voice filled with panic. He gritted his teeth, trying to hold on. The power within the crystal was overwhelming, but he couldn't let go. He couldn't let it win. His mind flashed to everything that had brought him here. The crash, the strange connection he felt with Alicia, the bond they had formed. And then he thought of her. The hope in her eyes, the love she had given him, even when it seemed impossible. He closed his eyes, focusing on that feeling, the one that had made him promise to help her, to never leave her side. He thought of her smile, her laughter, the way she had trusted him even when the world around them was falling apart. It was that love, that pure, unspoken connection that he held on to now. With a final, forceful push, Jace's hand pressed deeper into the crystal. There was a flash of brilliant light, and the room seemed to explode with energy. The pressure vanished, replaced by a peaceful stillness that spread through the room. Jace stumbled back, breathing heavily, his heart pounding. He looked at the crystal, which was now dim, its glow fading to nothing. The hum in the air had stopped, and the weight that had hung over them seemed to lift. Alicia stepped forward, her expression one of awe and disbelief. "You did it," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "The curse. It's gone." Jace looked at her, his heart still racing. "Is it really gone?" he asked, his voice uncertain. Alicia's eyes sparkled with something new, something he hadn't seen before. "Yes," she said softly. "It's gone. I can feel it." And for the first time since they had met, Jace saw a genuine smile on her face, a smile that wasn't shadowed by the curse or the weight of her past. It was the smile of someone who had been set free. Jace stood still for a moment, watching the light from the crystal fade into nothingness. The air around them had changed. The once oppressive energy had lifted, leaving behind a calm stillness. Alicia's face had softened, her expression lighter than it had ever been. It was as if the weight of centuries had been lifted from her, and for the first time she was truly free. She stepped closer to Jace, her eyes still wide with wonder. "I can feel it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can feel love again. It's like the world has opened up to me." Jace's heart beat faster at her words, a deep sense of relief washing over him. He had done it. Together they had done it. The curse that had bound her people for so long was finally broken. But there was still so much to process. So much had happened in such a short time. Jace had gone from being a soldier on a routine mission to someone who had helped break an ancient curse on an alien world. "I'm glad," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I'm glad I could help you." Alicia looked up at him, her eyes now filled with something else, something that had been hidden beneath the sorrow. It was hope. You didn't just help me, Jace, she said, her voice firm but soft. You helped all of us. My people. We can feel again. We can love again. You've given us a chance to rebuild, to heal. Jace felt a lump form in his throat as he realized the enormity of what they had accomplished. He had never imagined that he would play such a role in something so significant. He had come to this planet by accident, but now, he was part of something that would change the future of an entire civilization. But as the moment settled between them, Jace couldn't help but feel the weight of the unknown pressing down on him. The battle wasn't over yet. They had defeated the curse, but the enemies who had caused it were still out there. The rival species that had twisted the power of the temple to their will, they were still a threat to Elysia's people. And Jace knew that they wouldn't just let this go. I wish I could stay here with you, Jace said, his voice quiet but filled with honesty. But I can't. I have a mission to complete. I have to find my way back home. Elysia's expression faltered for a moment, the sadness creeping back into her eyes. I understand, she said softly, her gaze lowering, but I don't want you to leave. Not yet. Not after everything we've been through. Jace reached out, gently lifting her chin so that she would meet his gaze. Elysia, I care about you. More than I can explain. But I can't stay here. Forever. I don't belong here. I have my own world. My own life. She nodded slowly, though her eyes still held that hint of sadness. I know, but you've changed everything for me, Jace. You've shown me what it means to feel again. You've shown me love. He let out a deep breath, his mind conflicted. There was a part of him that wanted to stay, to be with her, to help her people rebuild. But he knew he couldn't abandon his mission. He had a duty to complete, a responsibility to his own world, his own people. Maybe we can find a way to make things work, Jace said, his voice filled with uncertainty but determination. I don't know how, but I'll figure it out. I won't leave you, not for good. Elysia's eyes softened, her lips curving into a small but genuine smile. You've already done so much for me, Jace, for my people. If that's the only thing you can promise, then it's enough for me. Jace smiled back, feeling a warmth spread through him. They had come so far together, and now they had to face the future. He wasn't sure what that future would look like, but he knew that Elysia would always be a part of it. As they stood there, surrounded by the remnants of the ancient temple, Jace felt a new sense of purpose. The world around them was still uncertain, filled with dangers that they hadn't yet faced. But for the first time in a long time, Jace didn't feel alone. He had someone by his side, someone who understood him in ways he had never expected. The journey ahead would be difficult. They would have to fight to protect what they had fought so hard to build. But for now, in this moment, they had each other, and that in itself was enough. Elysia turned away from him, her gaze drifting back to the temple. We have to rebuild, she said, her voice steady now, full of resolve. My people have been broken for so long. It's time for us to start again. Jace nodded. And I'll help you, however I can. Together they turned away from the altar, leaving the temple behind. There was a long road ahead, one filled with unknowns and challenges, but Jace knew that they would face it together. And with that thought in mind, they set off into the unknown, ready to build a new future, one filled with hope, love, and the strength of their bond. As Jace and Elysia left the temple behind, the world around them seemed to change once more. The atmosphere, once thick with oppressive energy, had lightened. It was as though the planet itself was breathing a sigh of relief, no longer held captive by the curse that had bound its people for generations. The air was clearer, and the once vibrant colors of the sky seemed even brighter. Everything felt more alive, more hopeful. But beneath the sense of peace, a quiet tension still lingered in Jace's mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that the fight wasn't over yet. The rival species that had cursed Elysia's people weren't simply going to walk away. They had made their intentions clear. They wanted power, control, and they would stop at nothing to regain it. Jace knew that the moment they left the safety of the temple, they would be vulnerable once again. Elysia seemed to sense his unease. As they walked through the forest, she stayed close to him, her eyes scanning the horizon as though expecting danger to appear at any moment. Jace admired her strength, even though he could see the toll the past few days had taken on her. She had endured so much, and yet she remained determined, driven by the hope that they could rebuild her world. "We need to find a safe place," Jace said, his voice steady. "We can't stay out in the open like this. It's only a matter of time before they realize what's happened here." Elysia nodded, her expression serious. "I know. We need to warn my people too. They'll need to be ready. The enemy won't stop until they've regained control." They pushed forward, moving quickly through the forest, each step taking them further from the temple and into the unknown. The trees were dense, their leaves creating a canopy that blocked out much of the light, casting the path ahead in shadows. It felt like the forest itself was trying to keep them hidden, as though it understood the danger they were in. After several hours of walking, they came across a small clearing. It was a quiet spot, peaceful and isolated, with a stream running through the center and a few large rocks scattered around the edges. Jace knew it wasn't the safest place to stop, but they needed rest, and this seemed like the best option, for now. "We'll make camp here for the night," Jace said. "It's not perfect, but it'll have to do." Elysia agreed, and they set to work, gathering what they needed to make a fire. The sound of the water flowing in the stream was calming, and for a brief moment Jace allowed himself to relax. The constant pressure of the last few days, the battle with the curse, the temple, and the fear of the unknown, had worn him down. But now, with the threat of the curse lifted, there was a sense of calm that he hadn't felt in a long time. As the fire crackled to life, Jace sat beside Elysia, both of them staring into the flames. The heat from the fire felt comforting against the cool evening air. Elysia looked at him, her expression softer now than it had been in days. "Jace," she said, her voice gentle, "thank you. For everything. I don't think I could have done this without you." Jace met her gaze, his heart swelling with emotion. "You don't need to thank me, I'm just glad I could help. I care about you, Elysia, more than I ever thought I could." Elysia smiled, her eyes glowing with warmth. "I feel the same way," she said. "I never imagined that I would find someone like you, someone who could make me feel again, after everything I've been through. You've shown me what it means to hope, to love." Jace reached out, taking her hand in his. "We're in this together," he said softly. "Whatever happens next, we face it as a team." Elysia squeezed his hand, and for a moment, the weight of the world seemed to disappear. They were no longer two strangers from different worlds, thrown together by chance. They were allies, partners in a fight that was far from over, but one they would face together. Just as the fire began to die down, a sudden noise interrupted the stillness of the night. Jace's instincts kicked in immediately. He stood, his hand on his weapon, scanning the surroundings. Elysia was already on her feet, her eyes wide, her senses alert. "Did you hear that?" Jace whispered. Elysia nodded, her gaze fixed on the shadows. "Yes, it's them. They've found us." Before Jace could react, a group of figures emerged from the darkness, their shapes outlined by the faint light of the fire. The first thing Jace noticed was their weapons, sleek and deadly, with designs that looked alien even to his trained eyes. The figures were tall and humanoid, with sharp features and glowing eyes that gleamed with an unsettling intensity. Jace's heart raced as he stepped in front of Elysia, his hand gripping the hilt of his weapon. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice low but firm. Elysia nodded, her own body tense, ready to fight. But Jace could see the fear in her eyes. These were the same enemies who had cursed her people, the ones who had twisted the power of the temple for their own gain. He couldn't let them take her again. The leader of the group stepped forward, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "You're brave, human," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. But this is where your journey ends. The curse may be broken, but our control over this world remains. Jace's jaw clenched. Not if I can help it. The tension in the air was thick. The fight was about to begin, and Jace knew it would be their greatest challenge yet. The tension in the air was palpable. Jace stood firm in front of Elysia, his heart pounding in his chest. The figures that surrounded them were like shadows in the flickering firelight, their eyes glowing with a cold, unsettling light. The leader of the group, a tall alien with sharp features and a cruel smile, stepped forward, his eyes never leaving Jace. "You've come far, human," the leader said, his voice smooth but laced with malice. "But this is where your journey ends. The curse may be broken, but we still control this world, and you're nothing more than an obstacle." Jace's grip on his weapon tightened. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing on him. He had no idea how many enemies surrounded them, or what they were capable of, but one thing was clear. Elysia's people were still at risk, and he couldn't let them suffer again. "Won't let you take this world," Jace said, his voice calm but filled with resolve. "Not after everything we've fought for." The leader laughed, a dark, hollow sound that echoed in the night. "Fought for? You think you can stop us? You're a single soldier, far from your people, and she," he pointed at Elysia, "is nothing but a broken relic of a lost civilization." Elysia stepped forward, her eyes burning with defiance. "You are wrong," she said, her voice steady. "I am not a relic. I am the future, and this world belongs to my people, not you." Jace couldn't help but feel a surge of pride for her. She had come so far from the scared, lost alien he had first met. Now she stood tall, unafraid to face the enemies who had once ruled over her people. The leader's expression darkened. "You've broken the curse, yes, but that doesn't change the fact that we still control the power of this planet. This world's future is ours to shape, not yours." Jace knew that words alone wouldn't stop them. He had seen the cruelty in their eyes, the desire to keep the power for themselves. The only way to protect Elysia's people was to fight, and he wasn't afraid to do that. He glanced at Elysia, who nodded, her face filled with determination. "Let's finish this," she said softly. Without warning, the leader raised his hand, and the sound of weapons being drawn filled the air. Oryu, alien soldiers around them stepped forward, their weapons gleaming in the firelight. Jace's heart raced, but he knew he couldn't hesitate. He had to protect Elysia, and he had to fight for her people's future. He drew his own weapon, the familiar weight in his hand comforting, and took a defensive stance. "Stay close," he said to Elysia. She didn't hesitate, moving to stand beside him. The crackling of the fire and the rustling of the alien soldiers was the only sound in the clearing, but Jace's focus was razor sharp. He could feel the energy around him, the sense that everything hinged on this moment. This was it, the final battle. The leader lunged forward first, his weapon aimed directly at Jace. With quick reflexes, Jace blocked the strike, the force of the blow sending a shock through his arm. He countered with a swift kick to the leader's side, forcing him back. But the leader was fast, recovering instantly and launching another attack. Jace ducked and dodged, using the space around him to his advantage. The enemy soldiers moved in, but he fought with everything he had, his training kicking in as he moved like a blur, striking with precision and skill. Elysia stood behind him, watching with wide eyes but never moving away. She was ready to fight, but Jace wanted to protect her as long as he could. The leader wasn't going down easily. He was relentless, his movements fast and powerful, like a predator hunting its prey. Jace felt the strain in his muscles as the fight wore on, but he couldn't stop. Not when Elysia's people's freedom was at stake. Elysia's voice rang out as she stepped forward, her own weapon drawn. "Jace, we need to end this now." Jace nodded, his eyes narrowing on the leader. He knew she was right. They couldn't keep fighting like this forever. They needed to stop the leader and his soldiers before they could regroup. With a sudden burst of energy, Jace rushed the leader, using the element of surprise to land a solid hit to his side. The leader staggered, and Jace seized the opportunity, knocking the weapon from his hand. The alien leader fell to his knees, gasping for breath. his defiance finally crumbling. "This world doesn't belong to you," Jace said, his voice low and steady, "and neither does the power you tried to steal." Elysia stepped forward, her eyes filled with conviction. "It's over," she said to the leader, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 years of suffering. "Your reign is finished." The leader looked up at her, his eyes filled with rage and disbelief. "You can't stop us," he spat, his voice filled with venom. "We will rise again. We always do." Elysia's gaze remained firm. "Not this time." With that, the leader fell silent, his will broken. The soldiers around them hesitated, unsure of what to do next. They had been following the leader's orders, but now their resolve was crumbling. Jace and Elysia stood together, ready for whatever came next. The rest of the soldiers slowly lowered their weapons, realizing they had lost. The power they had once held was no longer theirs to command. The world would be free of their control. Elysia turned to Jace, her eyes filled with gratitude and something deeper. "We've won," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Jace smiled, exhaustion and relief washing over him. "Yeah, we've won." And in that moment, standing together with the dawn rising on a new day, they knew that their fight was over. But their journey, together, was just beginning.